Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 with the World of Blaze mod, and we're sort of comparing it to Black Ice. So far, rather favorably. We've gone in last episode, and now they should be here. Bunch of fighters to help deal with over Western Germany there. Bunch of fighters up here. Well, a few fighters up there. Maybe we need more. Yep, we're producing almost 4 fighters a day, maybe. At least 3+ fighters a day. So we're mostly going to hold along East Prussia. We're going to push in towards, well, sort of cut off and then push in towards Danzig. We're going to burst out with our panzers towards Warsaw while pushing along the line here with infantry units. And I think I want to move one of you down to here. Okay, so all except for the bomb damage things, which we're going to think about, but I guess some of my other priorities are here. Like the F and the D model. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, movement attack, that would be nice for them. Yeah, we'll do that, I guess. Balance import exports. Yeah, no, we're not going to give him our field command. Okay. Now let's take a look at the Navy. Here we are. Okay. We're going to select this, and then we're going to select submarines. Here we are. Select troops to transfer. There we go. Okay. Back to the... No, that's not the main fleet. Yeah, yes, it sort of is. There we go. Let's put Raider in charge of this. Donuts in charge of this. I don't really play much with naval forces. You can probably tell. I'm not like my friend Toyjet, who just loves playing naval stuff. Okay. We have a lot of subs. Do we make more BBs? Well, we have a few. Do I send my sub out into the Atlantic or not? Let's send them out there. Hopefully far enough out from naval operations. Hopefully 176 of them will be effective. Biggest worry here is invading Norway and not being able to do it efficiently. Oh, we have some Italian submarines here hanging out with us? Okay. Just noticed the flag. We have little subs patrolling all over. Well, let's do reconnaissance first. Well, we have some, but maybe not many because of that, yeah. It's hardly enough. Cancel. Don't want them all shot down. Oh, we're not okay. We're producing, yes, after we get those, we're producing. We need longer range fighters too. Yeah, we need to research the 110s. Well, maybe I'm just focused more on industry than I should be. But, well, no, I don't think so. I think they need more research slots for Germany. When you expand to needing, say, both types of tanks, support tanks and main battle tanks, as it were. And whatnot. Yeah, I think more slots are needed. We'll do this here to the Emil. Long range combat. Okay, we're gonna move. These doctrines are great, but I think we're gonna get some of these. Stop that. Hey, Rhaegar Delshi. Well, last time I started with this game, I got my butt kicked because this mod is different than I'm used to. So, no. Well, I'm not that good, I guess. I don't know, however you want to look at it. Because this mod changes things considerably. Here we can do that, 7 days, that's nice. I am going to continue with the um, 1940 start, 35 days, so but a little earlier than I did last time. We're going to save that because, well, not specifically there. Well, things are very different, and so when you're used to playing, say, either standard or black ice, and you come over to this with very different assumptions here, it becomes a bit of a learning curve, if you will. Hello, General Beta. How you doing today? And anybody and everybody out there, if you haven't already followed on Twitch or subscribed on YouTube, you can do so. And I'm live streaming to both platforms simultaneously, so whichever one you like to do, you may do so. Watch me on, that is. Let me just check something here for a minute. Okay. Here we go. Back to this. Who needs a spare division? Who needs a spare division? Down here. Line Hungary, very nice. Second Vienna Wars, we need to align Romania. Well, Yeah, I saw the negative viewpoint about that. Now we don't. Well, let's. We don't currently. I've not done anti-Comintern Pact. It's the way this has been interpreted. It's a very sort of Asia-focused. Focus. Looking for a different word there, but now the original Anti-Comintern Pact was suggested by Hungary, but they end up not, and I'm not sure why, not initially joining it. They eventually get into it, but they don't, and eventually, Italy joins it and a few other nations. Then the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact happens that technically breaks the Anti-Comintern Pact. Once Germany goes to war with Russia, they set up a second Anti-Comintern Pact. And sort of surprisingly, one of the nations that joins the second Anti-Comintern Pact, basically their own free will, is Denmark. Even though they're occupied by Germany, they joined the Anti-Comintern Pact. So it's sort of renewed, if you will. And I don't know, but think of peaceful coexistence with the Soviet Union. You have to realize here that okay, give a little bit of a communist phobia. Yeah, they did. Okay, and I'm gonna let me check. Sorry. It was. Yeah. Okay. Just sort of little history sort of lecture here. Try to keep this somewhat short for my viewpoints. You have the Anti-Comintern Pact. You have the sort of Spanish Civil War breaks out. Now, there's a lot of, and I talked about it in my recent Spain and World War II video. You have, and I'm not going in here now. You can check that out on my YouTube front page right now on my channel. There's a lot of local reasons for the Spanish Civil War, but it does come to be seen as a conflict between right-wing and left-wing forces. And it's not internationally. It's not entirely all of that. It's various things. Italy in a big way, Germany, I would say, in a small way, or medium-sized way, intervenes on the nationalist side. The Soviet Union in a active sense, I mean, they send some pilots, they send a lot of sort of NKVD types, but they don't send like infantry divisions to Spain, but they send massive amounts of equipment to Spain for the Republican side, and massive amounts of supplies. So there's definitely, shall we say, a hot conflict in what is sort of a Cold War with communism. And this is sort of how nations like Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia are seeing these things. Romania is very much pro-France, secondarily pro-Britain, wants to be a Western nation. I'm not saying it is a Western nation. I'm saying it sees itself as a Western nation, not as an Eastern nation. Wait for the loud motorcycle to go by. Because it speaks or at least its written language is sort of a messed up version, as I call it, of Latin. It's not the sort of Cyrillic type peoples that almost literally surround it. I mean, the Magyars, the Hungarians, aren't that. But you have the Serbs, you have the Bulgars, you have the the Poles, the Ukrainians, they're all Slavic peoples, as I would generally lump them in. And I'm not talking about any weird racial way that Hitler and the Nazis talk about. I'm talking about it in cultural sense. And so Romania sees itself as sort of an outpost of the Roman Empire that's left there and whatnot. But the other nations around it, and so it has a very sort of Western focus. The other nations, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, don't have quite as a Western focus, but they have a very sort of anti-Soviet focus and in most cases, an anti-Russian focus that goes back. Now, you do have like the Aerocross party in Hungary. You do have, I forget what it's called, the fascist party in Romania. Is that the Iron Cross party? I forget. In Romania. That at various times they come to power in those countries, but Horthy, the admiral in charge of, the regent in charge of Hungary, is not a fascist as far as I can tell. The king of Romania, and as well as Antonescu, who is, as time goes on, almost becomes a de facto ruler there as a general, he is not a fascist. Those two people, I would call them nationalists. You have the Poles, and they sort of vacillate. They're nationalists, obviously, and fear being absorbed by the Iron Cross was banned in 1941. Okay, thanks, General Beta. But didn't they later on take power? I don't know. I'm not up on all that, sorry. And so, where Poland is, afraid of both of its big neighbors, and, shall we say, is accepting of democracy in sort of a on the big scale position, as sort of centrist democracy, shall we say, parties are. I mean, they're not going to be terribly accepting of socialists because there is a socialist youth movement there, I know, in Poland, but because they're afraid that socialism will just lead to communism, which will lead to Russian crushing them. So they're sort of, democracy is what we want, but because we're in a constant national emergency, basically being squeezed between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, they verge on dictatorships, but it's more not dictatorships because one guy wants to be the super dictator, and not dictatorships because that's their ideology. It's more like, hey, we have a national emergency, we have to all work together. And so instead of, party politics pulling our country apart kind of thing. So you're looking at that kind of grouping, and they see the National Socialist and the socialist ideologies. And they're socialist. They may not like each other, but they may be closer to each other than they are to what you have in Hungary, Poland, Romania. So, from their perspective, it's not it's inevitable that they're going to fight, or that it's, maybe it's inevitable that they're going to fight, but they're going to carve up all the little people first. Like Poland split it. Poland, every single person of any sort of political level, whether it's a town mayor, a city, big city type mayor, a legislature, person, whatever, to the various parliaments, every single high level leader, every single bureaucrat in the country knows, I'm talking like in Romania and Hungary and Bulgaria and Lithuania, they know the history of, they know the history of Poland and its historical division between Prussia, Russia, and the Habsburgs over time, and the brief sort of flowering of it under Napoleon, and then back mostly under Russia and Prussia. they know this history, and they know Romania could be this, a sort of, shall we call it Greater Romania here, but notice I did click on the part that could go, and this part and that part back to, shall we say, had been Habsburg rule, but might go back to being Hungarian rule, and this part could go to being Russian rule. And now, of course, they had been sort of the remainder bits had been before, sort of the turn of the century, a little bit before, it had been part of the Ottoman Empire. So, they're well aware of the idea that their countries could be carved up between socialist and national socialist. And again, you can look at TIK's video on it. Germany, and I vacillate whether National Socialism is right-wing or left-wing, but it is socialism. Now, it's not Marxist socialism. It doesn't want to collectively own the means of production by the state, but it does believe that the means of production, which include things like food, belong to the collective of the community. And so it's socialism, yes. It's socialism that recognizes hierarchies. It is a hierarchical socialism. So you can be now National Socialist wants to remove the ancient lineages of dukes and whatever from any sort of power structure. But you can be a person who owns a big, huge factory, and owns it, and has some decision-making capabilities in there. But there is also government-stationed, if you will, because the party becomes the government. Government-stationed labor organizers from the DAF, the Deutsches Arbeitersfront, that can contradict it's not like, if you don't do what we say, we're going to go on strike. No, there's basically no strikes by any sort of National Socialist Party unions once the National Socialists are in power. That's not their weapon. It's basically government authority that say you will do it this way in this factory. So yes, they're sort of in charge, but there's a guy sitting in the factory appointed by the party, and the party is a function of the government telling the factory owner what to do as well. So it's not government ownership of that factory in the direct sense that we find it in the Soviet Union, but it is, and it's more socialized than fascism in Italy. And one of the big differences between fascism and National Socialism, which in both the East and the West is lumped together, fascism wants coordination between companies for efficient use. I think that might be a good way to say it. So they want central planning, a central planning regime that plans out the markets, that organizes the markets. Hitler and National Socialism wants competition. That's why it sometimes looks like capitalism, but it's not. Hitler is very much of a Darwinian viewpoint on things. He wants companies to compete with each other, and sometimes to crush the other, but just also to make each other stronger. So they don't want central planning. Now they get central planning under Speer in the sort of wartime. Yeah, we're staying. You're absolutely right. Fascism wasn't anti-Semitic by its nature. That's another element, but I'm looking, and obviously, yes, National Socialism as Germany practices it is a racial identity, but you could translate National Socialism away from race, meaning you could have a modern, I don't know, and I don't know, but I do think there are National Socialist elements in Iran, in modern day Iran, and Iran, and we'll call them Persians for the moment to distinguish them against. Persian is sort of the dominant ethnicity in Iran, or you want to call them Iranians, but I'm trying to stay away from the passport holders, because down here and along the coast there's a lot of Arabs, and then you have Kurds, and you have, I think, some Armenians, and you have different sort of ethnicities within the nation of Iran. Now, I don't know how racially in modern day Iran it is looked at versus culturally, meaning language they speak. I don't think, and I may be wrong, but I don't really think modern day, and we'll again say Persians, rulership here are looking to extinguish the genetic bloodline of the Arabs that are sort of, coastal Arabs that are down here. I think they just want them to all learn Persian and be Persians. It's not a genetic thing, it's a cultural thing. At least that's how I'm interpreting what little I know of it. So you can have National Socialism without a racial component. I would argue some of the left in America, although the intersectionalism is very racially charged, has National Socialist. They don't want to admit it, but they have a lot of National Socialist aspects within their, I'm talking the left. I'm not just saying liberals, I'm saying the left. They sort of want to have maybe things like Amazon to exist, but they also want to have a government representative in the Amazon, because they're not, at least mostly they don't produce their product, but in the shipping floors or whatever else. Is this no? I still, Nazgul 1, I still like Hearts of Iron 3 Black Ice better. I was comparing Black Ice Hearts of Iron 4 with World Ablaze Hearts of Iron 4. But just get back onto this. So, looking at National Socialism isn't leveling Marxism. Marxist socialists look for leveling. And I use that term because if you look back in the 17th century Britain, there are levelers. They're not communists. They're not socialist in a Marxist sense. They just want everyone, and it's often an agrarian economy, is to own the equal quality of land. So some land is more, productive than other land, but they want to have everyone have the same acreage or the same, if it's good farmland, he gets smaller, and somebody has less good upland that's on the hills for grazing, he gets greater. But shall we say equal value of land? They're levelers. I hate levelers as well. And Marxist socialism believes in levelers and leveling, and the idea of equality of outcome. Either everyone has a car or no one has a car, in that kind of concept. They're levelers. But that is not the only types of socialism. You can have socialism that believes in the ultimate collective ownership of the means of production in the community, while acknowledging, hey, some people are going to be rich, some people are going to have greater industry. But the National Socialists, although they don't entirely eliminate it, are sort of against the idea of market capitalism and largely against the idea of like stock market trading. It doesn't mean the community can't have ownership communally in a factory, meaning different people own shares in a factory, but they don't want the idea of speculation on, getting rich by trading in stocks, buy low, sell high kind of thing. They don't. There's a lot of ranting against that in National Socialist literature, and that sort of capitalism. So, and these are, and again, getting back to the Anti-Comintern Pact and the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, these people out here are, we'll call them traditionalists for lack of a better collective term. They're traditionalists. And some of the economies are still very agrarian. And agrarian, not just agriculture, lack of industry. I mean their muscle power or wind and water power agrarian, meaning they don't have tractors, or they don't have other driven farm machineries. They're milking all their cows by hand and not hooking them up to milking machines that suck it all into big vats very quickly. And trucks don't come by daily and pick up the milk and drive it to the city daily. Not that that doesn't happen. I'm sure you can point to those existing, but a great, excuse me just a second, a great amount of the farms are not that in this part of the world. And so they're not necessarily huge, market capitalist industrialists. They are traditionalists. And so they see themselves being squeezed between National Socialism and international socialism that wants to, there is constant propaganda breaking down religion. Oh, breaking down religion in Germany too. Now they're just replacing it with National Socialist religion. I guess in a way they're using international socialist religion, breaking down religion in the East as well. And they're also trying to break down nationalism as much as they can. And it is only with the German invasion do you start to see Russianness used in propaganda against the against the invasion of the Soviet Union by Germany. So these nations in here, Poland, oh, hey, yeah, Molotov, let's get it right, have just agreed on something. Prussia and Russia have just agreed on something. What would Russia and Prussia have to agree upon? I wonder what that could be. Now, Poland, of course, was never invited, was not going to be allowed to be part of the Anti-Comintern Pact, but primarily because Germany wants to erase anything termed Pole. He is very anti-Polish. National Socialism and fascism are kind of notorious for abusing religion for their own gain, I believe. General Beta, I would say fascism, which I don't know if it's an accident or not, but fascism almost exclusively comes to power substantially or has substantial support. Not entirely, but almost exclusively, but yeah, in Catholic countries. And, in one of Hitler's trips to visit Mussolini down in Italy before the war starts, and Mussolini, of course, had the Concord with the Vatican that allowed primary education to remain in the church's hands. Mussolini didn't like this, but he accepted it. And so it's not the state necessarily educating the youth, it's the church still. And so Mussolini asks, well, how do you deal with the church? Or words, obviously. Mussolini did speak German, if you don't know. I don't know how good he was. I don't know how much he used an interpreter with Hitler. Hitler speaks no Italian, as far as I know, but Mussolini does speak German to a degree. Again, I don't know how good it was. But I think they did have direct conversation. Like you see pictures of Hitler and Mussolini riding in the back of a car together. They're sort of smiling and laughing. I think they're speaking German together. Now, when they're in a formal negotiations over diplomatic points, they very well may be using translators so that, the Italians, including Mussolini, knows the, detailed meanings of diplomatic terms or something like that. So they very well, at some levels, may be using, translators too. But I think they could talk on with each other a bit in German. So Mussolini asks Hitler how is he dealing with the church and whatnot, and Hitler's basic response: "I don't have any Christians around me." Short video, Mussolini speaking German, 2 Germans. It was okay. Good to hear, General Beta, because I didn't have any before you've mentioned this real, what a German or a German speaker would assess Mussolini's German was. Now, of course, also a speech is probably written in advance. So, he knows the language, but is also, memorized or reading it, I guess. But that can be a thing. And so I don't have any Christians around me. And that definitely, and this is noted in a book on Hitler's religion. Hitler is anti-Christian at his core, but he's not anti-religious. He believes in some, whether it's neo-paganism or keep forgetting the other word that they want to use. I'm more in the neo-paganist camp, but I forget the other word. But it sort of is more of a guiding creator force. Hitler believes that there's a power above his that's guiding his destiny. And I think that is clear. Now, just how he views that power above him is different. But none of the close confidants of Hitler are Christians. None. Not saying they didn't go through, weren't married in a church or something, but none of them are practicing Christians. None of the top Nazis are practicing Christians. There isn't a single one. And that is very clear. You could definitely hear his Italian accent, but I think it's much better than when Americans try speaking to them. Okay, General Beta, yes, I can imagine. Good to know. I'm glad to hear that assessment. And it's things that people need to understand about how all of this stuff works. So the conflict that I see in fascism and the church is not a conflict between Christianity and Christian belief and fascism. It is the level of control the church has within society. And not just the idea, there's the Vatican here, which, I've been there. It's small. It's still geographic territory. Now, of course, most of you are EU players. So you know about the papal states, physically controlling politically significant portions of territory. That has gone away, and I don't know, I don't know everything about history. I do think of myself as knowing a lot about history, but I don't know everything else. But I know the history of Britain better. You have Henry VIII kicking various reasons for getting rid of Catholicism. And if you don't know, Henry VIII writes a book in English that is published and is very popular, is a vehement and staunch defense of Catholicism. He is a champion of Catholicism in his younger days. No, understand, he actually writes the book, and it's well written. It's not just ghost written and he puts his name on it. He writes a book that's a vehement doctrinal support of Catholicism. By the end of his life, of course, he's excommunicated because he has banned Catholicism and confiscated all of the church, lands, the monasteries, and just the general church holdings. So he flips. Now, Henry VIII is not a Protestant in the sense of John Knox or I'm blanking on some of the names. Some of the Calvinism. He isn't. And I forget some of the English ones that he's earlier had killed. He's not a sort of a Protestant Reformation type person. He wants to see a more national church, but without monasteries and nunneries. And priests can get married, kind of the idea of it. It's still sort of a traditional church, but without a political control Rome. So they get rid of church, land, farm landowning, so if a church was going to exist, it's going to be in a city, big like cathedral, absolutely. And it's going to maybe own the land that the cathedral sits on and immediate sort of buildings around it. But it isn't going to be allowed to own half the town because people donated it to the church and it's no longer taxed or owned by the state. This is where Mussolini's conflict, I think, and I don't know how much of, say, farmland is owned by the church in Mussolini's Italy. I just don't know. This is an area of ignorance for me. But that kind of thing is where Mussolini has the conflicts with the church primarily, is control over, if you will, the actual means of production, ownership of land, ownership of property outside of immediate sort of church buildings. And I don't see Mussolini as a anti-monasteries or nunneries position, though he is a socialist and has those leanings. So they're not nearly as anti-Christian as we see National Socialism and International Socialism to coin them. And so one of the big, in my opinion, lies that Hitler tells is he convinces a lot of the world that National Socialism is fascism because he wants to get fascist support. In some countries, like Austria particularly, and again, those of you watched enough or have read enough, watched enough of my videos, or know that Austria was ruled by the Fatherland Front, which is a fascist party. Austria was fascist. Hitler wants to take it over, and there's a National Socialist movement in Austria. So in Austria, it was primarily a conflict between fascists and National Socialists. And a core element of National Socialism, as Hitler sees it, is all Germans, at least all Germans in Europe. He's not really, at least anything that he attributes because he attributes Anglo-Saxon England as being a type of Germans, and they are. He sees the success of America, although as corrupt as he sees it as a success between the National Socialists and the Germans who've moved to the United States or to the New World. He's not really wanting to organize those up into his Reich, but he wants to organize all Germans of Europe into it. So he wants to fool the fascist into thinking that National Socialism is just fascism plus German racism. It is not. Now, fascism and National Socialism have more in common, particularly in their ultranationalism, that both fascism and National Socialism have, versus international socialism, which is trying to get rid of nationalism. So there is definitely more reasons for these two to be aligned. But once you throw this in here, now I don't think Mussolini, as a fascist leader, is worried about the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. I don't think he was consulted by it, though. And I think that is one of the reasons that pisses him off so much and why he invades Greece without telling Germany that he's planning on invading Greece. Interesting consequences in history. There's the conflict over the Sudetenland. Mussolini comes in to be a peacemaker, gets the, first it's up in goals, something or other. Then the second meetings happen in Munich, between France, Germany, Britain, and Italy, with Mussolini as the mediator between the conflict over the Sudetenland and Czechoslovakia, without the Czechs being there. That makes Stalin more paranoid because he wasn't invited. Then Mussolini is not invited to, or his representative, I guess it would be Count Ciano, his son-in-law, the foreign minister, is not invited to the diplomatic negotiations in Moscow. And also, again, remember, while the negotiations between Ribbentrop and Molotov are happening in Moscow, there is a Franco-British delegation meeting with some other foreign ministers trying to negotiate Soviet Union into, this is before the war starts, into an alliance with Britain and France. The main stumbling block for them is they won't accept the idea that the Baltic states and maybe Finland will get to be swallowed up by the Soviet Union, whatever Poland might have been. And so that is, they won't budge on that. And so the better offer comes from Hitler. And so you have to realize this. It ended in a German victory. That's how it ended, General Beta. At least, the conquest. Now, of course, the war goes on. And there was no real good sign of Italy throwing the Germans/Italians out. It was only the outside powers defeating them. Hello, Scappy5, how you doing? So, Mussolini, yeah, is a bit peeved over not being part of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, but he doesn't see it, as far as I know, as a, I'm doing well, thank you. So, but these nations in here very well could see that. Now, I do believe nations that had good relations with Germany are getting diplomats, they're the ambassadors, are talking to these nations here and trying to go, yeah, hey, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Too much. We'll just have to give that to the Soviet Union. This and this are going to go to the Soviet Union. This is going to go to the Soviet Union. This is going to sort of be in the German sphere. Oops, we changed our mind later on. That goes to the Soviet Union, and we get more of Poland. But yeah, we'll talk about that. So I know this has been a long history, hope interesting history analysis more than specific lesson. So yeah. I don't know what happens really if we sign this now. So we get bad thoughts from Soviet Union, but we have good thoughts now. So I don't think we will sign that now. Yeah, I can understand that, Scappy. I do know, and I was talking maybe before you got here, about how Romania sees themselves as a Western nation, as opposed to seeing themselves as an Eastern nation culturally, not where it's located. They know where they are, an Eastern and Western European nation, and definitely Romania tries in about 1936 to get an alliance with France, but France just says no. It knows that it can't, and it was mostly at that time because Germany hadn't even taken Austria yet. It was an anti-Soviet alliance. France knows that it's not able to defend it, send off enough supplies, and it knows that the people aren't going to die, aren't going to accept the idea that they're going to fight the Soviet Union over the defense of Romania. So Romania is, and we will be seeing this, is forced into Germany's arms, as it were, and get their countries carved up. Okay. Okay, we are currently... How close are we to... No, I want to come here. Okay, we are 78 days out. So, well, what we're going to do is we're going to start another fighter line. We're going to start putting 2 more factories in it that will jump to being a 109, or no, 190, or, oh God, 110 fighter line. Okay, they need more tungsten. I want to... Okay, certainly I can. German focus tree here. Just sort of quickly. We can see over here air innervations, Wehrmacht through here, sort of the 4-year plan. This is if you want to go sort of an alt history route over here, come through the sort of historical path. We can see the diplomatic, Rhineland, Anschluss, fate of Czechoslovakia, down into the various Danziger wars here. Naval efforts over here, and sort of an alternative non-Hitler sort of path that they've sort of left in existence, if you want to play it. So everything's changed. It's not a total conversion in the sense that they've made a... before we do this, let's just take a quick look if there's some sort of national focus that you want to do. Okay, I think, okay, they need to be in the faction with Germany to get these. So we want to do that. Second Vienna Awards. Okay, yeah, that can happen even if they're in... This is only going to happen once France no longer exists. I don't know that I would have that as a requirement, but okay. We will invite to faction. Okay, so good. So now we have another nation in our faction. You can still trade with other nations even though Hitler's implemented autarky. Well, you can't if... And this is one of my conflicts. I have avoided doing it this time. Hitler's autarky, and I know you were probably not around, but when I talked about this earlier, was not a situation where he wouldn't trade with other nations. This is wrong, in my opinion. Hitler's autarky is first develop. Yeah, I figured the other nice thing in Romania. Yeah. Is more the idea of pushing companies to develop local resources where and when they can. But if they can't, say, get rubber, they weren't going to not buy rubber from foreign sources. But if they could build, synthetic plants to meet their rubber needs, even though it was more expensive, they were going to encourage, and it's more encourage than insist. Okay, stop training. Encourage them to buy German instead of buy foreign. So I disagree with this line of thought. And I think I have enough evidence to back up my... Okay, 21 days. Now, Danziger War is 35 days. We don't want to do this in the middle of winter. It doesn't really help us. Oh, November 1. Could we take him? I don't know. We're going to end this episode here. Not the live stream, just the episode. I want to thank all those watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And of course, I love hearing from you. Please post your thoughts below. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.